Okay, this is from my book, Prevent and Reverse Hypertension by me, Pete Rogers. This is part 2. Okay, so basically when somebody's got hypertension, if they've only had a little while, it's very easy to reverse it almost always. You know, Dr. McDougall and Nathan Pritikin, they would get 90% of their patients off their antihypertensive medications within just a couple days, if not the first day. If the person's had it for years, decades, it's going to be harder to reverse it, you know. So because, you know, they're going to have calcified arteries, they're going to have lost the Wynn-Kessel effect in their ascending thoracic aorta, and for all those reasons, it's going to take a long time. It might take months. They might never get it all the way down. But they're still going to improve the function of all their cells. I'll explain why, but you can have two people with the same blood pressure, but one is much healthier than the other one. There's numerous benefits for eating the healthy diet, even if your blood pressure doesn't come down as well as you would like it to. I've also wrote that I think conventional medical textbooks are hopelessly stupid. I think we already covered that you know, they say 95% of hypertension is idiopathic. You know, the doctor's an idiot and the patient's pathetic because, you know, we know for a fact that that's not true, all right? All right, so I'll show you here. The cure rate for hypertension with drugs is 0%. For diabetes type 2 with drugs is 0%. But low-fat vegan diet routinely cures people. And I joke that going to conventional medicine for treatment of type 2 diabetes or hypertension is like Dante and Virgil at the gates of hell, where it says, written over the gates of hell, abandon hope, all ye who enter. They literally tell you this is a chronic disease. You will never be cured. You'll have to take these pills for the rest of your life. And that's the yield of the pill, send a bill. It's ridiculous. They call themselves the standard, the gold standard, and they never cure anybody. It's a joke. Okay, almost all the patients, they have the same disease. Okay, this is why medicine gets a little boring when you understand it. Once you really learn a lot about medicine, you realize it's sort of a game, a scam. All these poor, ignorant people, they eat high-fat Western diets with fried food and, you know, oil and processed food and all this other nonsense. And they get, and also this, you know, processed food is also fattening because they make it taste good with all the MSG, MFG, etc., and people overeat it, and all the sodium, the salt. So they eat the high-fat diets, okay? They eat the tap water that's full of estrogenic chemicals, which also makes them fat. They drink the caffeinated coffee and tea and soda pop that also stresses them out more. Same hormones elevated, catecholamine and cortisol. They eat the dairy. They're drifting into atheism, which means you say life has no meaning, so they lack a sense of purpose, which makes them kind of depressed. They're using their cell phone held up to their head all day long and social media, making them anxious, nervous, stressed out, sleep deprived. So anyways, they're not doing well. People are not that healthy, okay? You know, I don't see that many patients in their 80s. People are dying sooner than they should be, okay? And even the ones over 60, most of them are mentally slow. So they're not doing well. So if you don't want to be like the average chump, you got to take care of all these things, okay? I'm 61, okay? I don't have any medical problems. My brain is really sharp still, okay? I'm going to try to keep it that way. I was really wanted to be a writer, and so I studied all these writers, and I saw many of them had a drop-off in their skill and their productivity after age 65 years of age or so, even 60. So I'm like, gosh, I don't want that to happen to me. So what do? You got to keep the arteries of your brain open, okay? And you got to avoid all the stimulants and all that other stuff, mitochondrial inhibitors. Okay, so anyways, they all have the same diseases. They all have hypertension and diabetes or prediabetes, which predispose to atherosclerosis, coronary artery disease, and cerebrovascular disease, atherosclerosis, and then atherosclerosis in their brain, as well as overtreating their hypertension and injuring the arteries in their brain from their hypertension and from their diabetes, and then their sleep apnea, and all the other chemical things I talked about with my supply and demand theory of dementia. They're just fat, sick, and stupid, you know. Like the Animal House movie, fat, sick, and stupid is no way to go through life. I mean, there's some things you can't change. Some things are just luck. But you can easily fix your diet and avoid these toxic chemicals. Okay, what else? They all get the same diseases, all the permutations. They had abdominal pressure syndrome. Then they go to the hospital, and the doctor doesn't know any better, just drugs the crap out of them. It's pretty routine. The patient's on 10, 20 drugs. Drugs don't work. Then they go for surgery. Chop. Surgeries don't work. Pain, poverty, misery, hassle, early death. Okay, that's what I see all the time. That's how it is in all the Western hospitals. Okay, this is known. Everybody just takes it for granted. Patients are not supposed to get better. They're just supposed to deteriorate. It doesn't have to be that way. I'm like the ghost of Christmas future. I'm showing you how bad it can be for the average chump, but it doesn't have to be that bad for you. Have a little gratitude. Learn the low-fat vegan diet. I'm telling you, McDougall was the best doctor who ever lived. He cured more patients than anybody who ever lived. He figured out the magic secret, the low-fat starch diet. If you want to be skinny and healthy, that's what you do. If you don't want to do it, go ahead. No one cares what happens to you. The only people that love you are your parents, your kids, maybe your spouse if you're lucky, okay? And so the proper attitude is, instead of whining and bitching, what you should say is, all I have to do is eat these low-fat, low-sodium plant foods. That's all I have to do, and I can avoid these terrible chronic diseases that are making everybody fat, sick, and stupid. That's a great deal. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. Okay, like I said, conventional medical books say 95% of hypertension is essential of unknown cause. Ridiculous. Okay. And they do that so they can just, because if they told the truth that you can just cure these patients with a low-fat vegan diet, they'd lose a lot of money. Okay, and then here's some things like doctors will say to me. Internal medicine doctor said this to me. He said, it's effing ridiculous that Walter Kempner was treating patients with this low-fat vegan diet back in the 1940s and 50s, and he's got much better results than we do in 2025. Yeah, that is the case. Okay, here's a picture just to sort of summarize what's going on. The patients are basically in what I would call the pit of doom. They have zero chance of getting better. They never get better with pills, and they almost all just take pills, okay? And so, you know, they're functional, illiterate, conformists, trusting proles. They go to the authority figure doctor, you know, a clown with a stethoscope who just gives them drugs, doesn't know how to help themselves, probably is hypertensive and diabetic, pre-diabetic themselves. And it's always raining, it's always sad, they never get better, and that's the pit of doom, okay? And then here's the unusual smart prole who decides they want to do better than that. They say, screw this drug stuff. I'm going to learn how to help myself. The patient's the one with the power. They can change their diet. They can exercise. They can avoid the toxins. And that's what the internal medicine doctors tell me. The patients don't realize they're the one who have the power. Whether or not they get better is up to them. They choose what to eat. They choose whether or not to drink alcohol, whether or not to smoke, whether or not to ingest caffeine. Okay? So, low-fat vegan diet, quit the alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, MJ, get some exercise, get some sun, have religion, have a purpose in your life, get your sleep, study nutrition on your own, and you're probably going to make a dramatic improvement. Dramatic improvement. So there it is. That's how you escape the pit of doom. Okay, that's it for today. Hope it was helpful.